Hey everyone, it's Rye Myers, your Broadway and Entertainment BFF, and you're watching Live with Rye, my live digital talk show series. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Hey, listen, do me a big favor. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, smash that subscribe button, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of Live with Rye. You'll also be able to get exclusive first looks at my content. If you subscribe, you'll be the first to know as soon as I post something. So hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my YouTube channel below. And it's also helping me out as well. And hey, listen, I love what I do, and I love being able to bring you some of the best interviews with some of the best people in the Broadway entertainment and pop culture industry and making amazing content. But I can't do it without your help. So if you are so inclined, I'd love if you'd consider heading to my website, ryethenewsguy.com/donate, which is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You also see it here, and consider donating if you are able to. And if you're joining us on a laptop or a desktop, you can scan this QR code. It'll take you to the link as well. But if you are so inclined, consider donating. I love doing what I do. I'm a one-man show, and your support means the world to me. So again, you'll see ryethenewsguy.com scrolling across the bottom of your screen, and please feel free to donate. And with that, let's get started and welcome my very special guest, Kimberly Faye Greenberg. Hey, Kimberly.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you too. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
I'm so happy to be here. This always is exciting.
I'm so excited to have you. And it's funny because for those who may not know, Kimberly, you were actually you were my very first guest. It was you, Ashley Kate Adams, and Michael Kushner sort of talk about 360, my very first guest back in September. And now even more 360, I'm having each of you on separately to talk about your incredible careers. So it's great to see you again.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so honored to have been the first and to be back. It's very exciting.
What a great time that was. You can watch that on my YouTube channel. You can go and see the first episode. So Kimberly, tell me, how did you get started in your career performing and sort of getting into acting and wanting to pursue it professionally?
Well, I think I've been doing this since I was very young. My mother said I would sing and dance in the crib, so I think I've always wanted to be a performer. Little did I know it at the time. But I think it kind of came to be in the fourth grade. I was playing the violin in the orchestra. Well, not in the orchestra at that point, because that was very beginner. But at that point, I was kind of getting interested in the arts. I was taking dance class. And then I ended up going to a summer camp, and it was called Follow Spot Theater Camp. And it was at a school where I lived in Virginia. And I went with my best friend at the time, and I fell in love. I will never forget that time. And from that point on, I was hooked. And then, of course, just doing it through school and then going into college, really wanting to do it. Realizing that theater was truly my passion, although I've kind of broadened my scope at this point as far as being on screen and on stage, backstage, things like that. But yeah, so I guess I've been doing it forever, which is a long time. Circles under eyes. Yes, long time.
I love that. You've been doing it your whole life. That is incredible. Well, listen, you've done this your whole life, and you've created some incredible things. One of it being your one-woman show, Fabulous Fanny Brice. How did this sensation come about to create Fabulous Fanny Brice and to want to portray and take on the legendary Fanny and late Fanny Brice?
Well, there's several different things that kind of went into it. I'll tell my little audition story. So initially in high school, because I wanted to go into musical theater and I was Jewish and looking the way that I did, looking very similar to Fanny Brice, I had several people be like, well, you need to look at Funny Girl because you're very similar to Fanny Brice. And obviously that's a role in musical theater you could play eventually. So that was the first time I had heard about it. And I grew up listening to Barbara because my mother had all the albums. But I didn't realize that at the time that like so much of that was Fanny Brice material. Like I didn't have any idea. Cut to me living in New York City, several years in, and I get a job out of town doing Fiddler on the Roof at a theater company. And they were going to do Funny Girl in their season in the following year. And they had asked if that would be something that would interest me. Of course, I said yes. And they said, well, and little did I know what I was getting into, because they were like, it's a huge role. Can you study it for the year? And then, we'll see how this goes. And I said, great. So I'm very much, when you tell me to do something or you challenge me to something even more so, I'm always one to say, okay, I'll try, right? I'm really good at taking a challenge. So I said yes. And I studied the role for a year, and I drove all my teachers crazy because and probably my classmates, because that's the only thing I ever did in my acting class is do scenes. And that was the only thing I ever did in my voice lessons was music from Funny Girl. So cut to, again, a year later, and I didn't book the job due to probably a series of different circumstances, which I think I was union at the time, and it was a non-union theater, and now, who knows? So there are different circumstances involved, didn't book it. However, the universe is funny, and all of that work I'd put in eventually paid off, because only a couple years later, I ended up using what I had learned from that role, putting it into a different role, which I was cast in. Sylvia Fine, Danny Kaye's wife, and ended up being affiliated with several different shows about Danny Kaye, one which opened Off-Broadway called Danny and Sylvia and ran for 3 years. And somebody saw me in that show, and funny enough said, I have this solo Fanny Brice show. Would you be interested in workshopping the show? So I said, oh, well, funny. I already am very familiar with Fanny Brice. So I did workshop it at least a year later, through a bevy of interesting things that happened with the show. I did end up workshopping it, making the album, and then opening it Off-Broadway at St. Luke's alongside Danny and Sylvia. So then I started playing Fanny Brice in the show. And luckily, thank goodness, the New York Times gave it a great review. The Associated Press gave it a great review, and people were seeing the show. And people saw me in that show, and then I got hired to do several other Fanny Brice shows that were not mine. But I also then got asked by several groups, a concert association that has a season, and a private sort of organization. They wanted something else that was Fanny related, another show. And so I ended up creating several different versions of what is now Fabulous Fanny Brice. And once I did it there and knew I had this thing, I sort of decided, again, challenge. I'd never done anything like this before. I never intended to have a solo show about Fanny Brice. Never did I intend to ever have a show of my own. But once that opportunity came to me, I was like, well, I could have this for the rest of my life. And I kind of put everything into it, and it was successful. And then over the past about 4 or 5 years through the process of performing that show and kind of figuring out what was working, what wasn't, it kind of solidified. And now we have kind of what I have now, which is a show that tours the country, a 2-hour show, and then a streaming show. Because of the pandemic, we pivoted.
Right. We're going to do that later. Yes.
Yeah. So now it's streaming online. And now I also do like group events, lectures. I love helping to keep the legacy of this woman alive. She was a prolific, amazing woman. I don't feel like she gets enough credit about what she has done in her life for modern musical theater, Broadway, her, influence over pop culture in America and things like that. So I just love to be able to keep her memory alive. And it's cool too, because the more I do it, I mean, several years in, you weren't really hearing about Fanny Brice a lot, but now more so as we've kind of come into the 20s again and the resurgence of the roaring 20s. Not so much during the pandemic, but we did have that. And I think we'll go back into that. We're seeing Boardwalk Empire and Maisel and Can You Ever Forgive Me, things where they're actually talking about her, which is really exciting, because now people are like, wait, who is Fanny Brice? And I'm like, well, I can tell you more about Fanny Brice. So much more than the funny girl story. So that's how it came to be. It was totally not something that I anticipated doing. Ask me 10 or 11 years ago. Even as I was kind of coming into the show, I had no idea where I would be now. Right. So yeah, it's something I didn't plan for. And I just kind of like, somebody challenged me and I said, okay, let's try this. And I surrounded myself with a group of people who are really talented and supportive. And here we are.
Wow. What an incredible story and incredible process from day one, and that you have just made it your own. You have done so much with the show, which we'll talk about later. You mentioned with the touring and taking that on streaming. I mean, that is incredible. And if I recall too, you kind of hold, I mean, like an unofficial record, right? Because you've played 2 shows at once, right? You are known in the theater community for literally being in 2 shows at once off Broadway.
Yeah, yes, that's like my claim to fame in the New York community. Well, I have a couple now because yes, right. So I basically I'm the first and only, I think I'm still the only person or actress, I think overall person to play leading roles in 2 off-Broadway musicals at the same time. So basically they ran in rep as St. Luke's over a period of several years. So yeah, so I'm the first person to hold that. And now, of course, I've kind of become known to as the Fanny Brice go-to gal, because now I've like done her in 4 shows. I have several albums. I've actually workshopped another show where I play Fanny Brice during the pandemic. So there might be a 5th show added to that list. But yeah, so that's cool too. Yeah.
That is amazing. That is so incredible. I mean, it just speaks for how talented you are. You know, you mentioned, you are the go-to Fanny girl, go-to Fanny gal. How did you find that niche, and how did you really hone in on it? Did you know sort of from day one when you began in the Fanny world that was what you were going to focus on? Or how did you really hone in on that niche, which you have been incredible at?
Literally, like I said, I mean, my show was the last thing to come around. So the show that's the 4th thing, one of my albums is from my show, and I've done a couple of other demo recordings as Fanny for other shows, but I don't quite count those because those aren't like in the public eye. But like I said, it's like, I think I've a lot of times in my career, and with Fanny, I was answering a need because it was what people were asking me for. And I just decided to say yes. And I think with the Off-Broadway show and all that research, I have very much an affinity for the woman. I mean, it's very weird. We do very much look alike. We are very close to being doppelgangers. If you put our 2 pictures together, it's eerily weird. Wow. Same facial expression, same dimple on the side of this side of the face. I'm like run backwards on my screen. Same dimple, same expression. It's so strange to me, but yet true. And so if you put them together, you can see that. And then she has given me so much permission as well, because she's really part of me now. I mean, in studying her, I'm not from New York. I'm from California originally, Southern California. Now, having played her, I have sort of like a little more New Yorkism in my just personality and in the way I speak, and that kind of thing, like the influence over me as a person, like her having so much chutzpah over her life and her ability. She really did say and do what she wanted to do. Like, you know what I mean? She was very much her own person as a woman, very strong personality in a good way. And that kind of gave me permission to own that in me too. So I don't know. I feel like I'm very passionate about this woman at this point. Do you know what I mean? So it's really cool. She's just innately in me. But again, in creating her, I was literally answering a need. I didn't know that this was all going to play out in this way, shape, or form. And really, truly, if a few people wouldn't have pointed out to me, do you realize you've done these things as her and all this as her? Unless people would have pointed out to me, I probably wouldn't have thought about it in that way either. Because as a human, as very type A, I'm always in the weeds of like looking for the next thing or what's that next thing I need to be doing. I'm never really looking back on how it's all kind of building block itself together, even though I do now more so, especially because I coach and teach, but like how to do these things. But again, I just it wasn't like I planned this. This is sort of how it worked out.
Yeah. That is, oh my God. I love it. That is amazing. Just incredible. Do you have a favorite song of Fanny Brice's that is one of your favorites to sing?
I love Secondhand Rose. That's like one of hers. I love My Man. That's her most famous tune. And of course, people would know that from many other singers having sung My Man, but it was originally Fanny's. And then my ultra favorite, I call it my anthem. It's not the Fanny Brice tune, but it is Don't Rain on My Parade. And even though it's not a real Fanny Brice tune, I think it's still a great ode to who she was. So I love that song as well from Funny Girl.
Well, those are all great, great songs. You know, you mentioned pivoting earlier. You've really pivoted during the pandemic and have made the show work on a virtual platform via Stellar Tickets. What has the traction been like, and what is that like to sort of have discovered a new audience? Full disclosure, I've watched this show and I reviewed it. You go to my website, ridethenewsguy.com, under Ride Reviews. This show, when I got the link, I was like, oh, okay, like here we go, another show virtually. I am literally telling you all, this show, I felt like I was in the theater. It's a very intimate performance, and I felt like I was sitting there watching it. And the way that you filmed it with the cameras and stuff was just incredible. And I remember, I think I told you afterwards that I just felt like, I was there watching and how special it was. So what was that? What has it been like, and what's the traction been like? And, to also be able to discover a new audience with that.
It's so interesting. It's been very challenging. I won't lie. I started streaming fairly early on in the pandemic, but this was before Stellar Tickets. I was streaming on YouTube on my own accord in fruition, by just selling tickets and then picking a time and making it live and then turning it off. And then that was fairly easy, and it was great because it was a new thing. I think I was one of the very, 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 very few people who were actually streaming a solo show, not like a cabaret or something they had just made, but I had an actual like show that was taped pre-pandemic. So full disclosure, my show is taped pre-pandemic.
Yes.
And the whole thing is I didn't even realize that I had something that I could put out in live stream. I was actually talking with Ashley Kate Adams, who is a collaborator of mine. Rhino's Ashley Kate Adams. And she's a producer. Yes, hello. And she is a producer. And we were just talking about getting my show out there, trying to figure out a new way to do that during the pandemic to kind of keep it alive. And she had said to me, do you have a great show video, a very good quality? And I was like, well, I actually do. I wasn't planning ahead, but I always make sure that I can try to get those things when I'm able, just in case, you know what I mean? Like for my own library, if not for who knows what else. And so I did, and I watched it. And the second I added credits to it and did chop some time off of it, because I believe, and I think we all know now, like Zoom and streaming fatigue is totally real. So the attention span is just not quite what it would be if you were sitting in the theater. But with editing it and adding graphics, opening credits and stuff, I was like, wow, I really do have a show. So then the YouTube was me learning how to market, because that's, again, a whole nother thing. I was my one-man band. I didn't have anybody helping me. I was doing a press release and doing the marketing and selling the tickets, doing the show. Anyway, so and then Stellar Tickets approached me and asked if I would be interested in learning their new streaming service. And they're a subsidiary of Gold Star, and they've been nothing short of amazing. So I highly recommend if anyone's thinking about streaming. They've got some great, great Broadway content now on the service, and they've been nothing but supportive. But I will say it was definitely a learning curve and well worth the effort, because I think what people, most people don't realize is streaming is not easy. When you're on a platform, even something like what we're doing this on now, it does require a learning curve and a bit of finesse. And when you're live streaming something, you're paying attention to the tech on your computer just as much as if you were sitting backstage at a light board, calling cues. So there's a lot to it. But I enjoyed that, and the challenge of that has kept me really busy and focused and creative during this time, which has been a blessing. And then as far as reaching new people, it has been cool to see where people are coming from to see my show. And it has expanded in the fact that, like, not only now do I have this show, but now I have groups who purchase tickets to see the show, and I have like a few lectures I do on Zooms or Q&As, kind of, about myself and about Fanny and things like that. So it's sort of expanded. And then, and again, I won't lie, it's very challenging to stream, because now there is so much content and so much choice, and you're not just speaking of what's just available to stream. You're speaking of, like, I mean, look at how many new streaming television platforms we have. Like, it's totally overwhelmed. So, I mean, I will say that that's the challenging part, is figuring out how to have people find the show. And I'm still trying to figure that out too, because my audience necessarily isn't the people that are on social media. So the theater people, yes, great. But, the older, more mature retirees who would have been familiar with Fanny growing up. And I also will say too, I like you had just said, and I'm just being honest, like you had said, I wasn't sure what to think about the show that I was going to watch. And I think too, it's hard. It's been a learning curve for me to figure out how to advertise my show so that people understand that they are actually watching a real show. I like to call it Hamilton without the $1 million budget. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a real show in front of an audience, and it's not, you know what I mean? Again, I'm not singing in my living room, and I don't negate any of that, because that's challenging in and of itself, but it is a different experience that I'm trying to give. I'm really trying to bring joy through a real night at the theater, because that's what she did. She did that during the Depression. She did that through all her life. So now I'm just trying to bring her back during a pandemic, doing the same thing.
So many parallels there. A pandemic, then pandemic now. You guys are bringing people joy. That's one of the things I said it before, and it is not like I'm not knocking it, but it's not your Zoom or like regular, like this was filmed in a theater like in the pandemic. No, this is like actual theater with people. And the amazing thing is, because of where it was filmed, it's so intimate that watching it. I mean, I was blown away when I watched it. And I mean, I watched it. We were almost 8-9 months into the pandemic. So, as you said, streaming fatigue is real. I mean, even with doing on here, you mentioned about tech. It's like, that's why a lot of times I look away, because I'm always making sure tech work and stuff. It's a lot, and cutting through that noise to get your stuff out there is so much harder today. And then there's every new streaming platform, and people think, today that it's streaming, so streaming must be Zoom, or it must be
it's interesting that people's different ideas of what that means to them,
right?
So, and it's very hard to communicate what my show is for whatever reason. I mean, it's not hard to communicate, but I think it's hard for people to either believe, or again, just because there's so much variety of certain things out there that you may not be quite sure what one thing is over the other, kind of thing.
Right. So, of course. Well, have you started to look ahead to the future, and are with live theater starting to slowly resume, and Broadway slowly on the horizon? Are there any possible live shows in the works or on the horizon that you might be confident about, or might?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I had a couple of things canceled of course, through the
Right.
pandemic. So they're now getting rescheduled. So I actually have a full live show in Arizona in February of 2022, which I'm super excited about. And I actually have, and I can't tell you, and that's actually in Green Valley, Arizona, which is outside of Tucson. Nice. And then as part of a season, available to the public. And you can find more information about that on my website. And then I have another show, which is basically going to happen as well, but I'm waiting for the final contract, so I can't say where it is. But I can say that it is in Kansas. Wow. And it would be in March of 2022. So we have several shows coming up, and I know I have other venues. There's another venue in California. Again, I think that will probably, hopefully, knock wood, work out as well in Southern California, just outside of LA, for 2022 as well. So there are other live shows coming up, and then I'm planning to keep streaming it, because I sell tickets in 3 or 4 month increments, because that seems to work out best, because people don't even plan that far in advance. People plan like 2 days in advance, but like for streaming stuff. But I'm sure that I have tickets on sale now through June, but I'm sure I'll open a new block of tickets. And they usually have like 3 maybe shows a month to choose from, as far as a streaming show. But because the fact is you can reach anybody from anywhere in the world. I mean, I've had people from, London see my show. I've had somebody from the Netherlands see my show. I mean, there are people all over the world who can tune in. So why would I not? I'm always going to have that, of course, there as well.
And it's great to have and to keep. And I know that's a lot of conversation that's been going on in the theater landscape is, when you come back in person, is to sort of also have that digital aspect for people who can't come and see it, and also as another way to monetize and to, bring in more monetization as well. So that's wonderful. I mean, look, as you said, if you can be performing it and having it air, and somebody in the Netherlands can watch it, streaming, and you're still able to perform. I mean, that's wonderful. That's just absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
So what have you learned about yourself through your time as playing Fanny Brice? What have you learned about yourself as an actress?
Oh, wow. Well, first, that I can actually do a solo show. I will never forget the first time I did, not my show, but One Night with Fanny Brice, when we workshopped it. And I will never forget the moment. It was at that point in time, if anybody watching this are performers or creatives, you always know that the workshop of the show is never what the show is later, because it's like twice as long usually. And it was like a 3-hour show, if not a little longer. And, oh my God, of me alone on stage, singing and dancing and tapping and all that. And I'll never forget, I remember I finished the show when the curtain came down, and I literally collapsed to the floor and just started bawling. I'll never forget that feeling of doing that, because that was the scariest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I knew from that point on, if I could do that, I could do anything. So I think that's the first thing that she taught me, was like, I can really do anything. And then there's a lot of interesting points on the journey where I thought Fanny was done, for many numerous reasons that were out of my control. And she just kept coming back. So I think another thing she taught me, and I still realize that with everything else I have going on as an actress and as in other realms of the business that I'm in, is that, everything works out. You know what I mean? Like, it really does. It does really work out. So she taught me that. And then, yeah, like, it's funny. The universe has a funny way of like giving you what you ask for, but also literally working it out for what really needs to happen for a long-term thing, or for the best kind of thing. And I don't know. She's given me so much strength as a performer. I would not be doing a lot of the work I'm doing now as a performer, not as Fanny Brice, if it wasn't for her. I mean, I mostly play historical women on TV, on film, on stage, and it was because of her. That's my niche she created for me. I wouldn't be a actor coach if it wasn't for Fanny, because people were asking me how I was doing what I was doing, and that's kind of how that spawned out. So she's taught me with just the streaming. I mean, I already know, I'm already pretty good at marketing and things like that, but I will say there were many other pieces of the puzzle as far as what I know how to do now that are much more widened and greater because of a lot of the things that Fanny has taught me as a touring show, as a streaming show, things like that. So it's just that on, and just as a human, again, she's given me so much permission as just a human to like be full of chutzpah in my life and not being afraid to ask for what I want, and different things that it's crazy. The list is endless.
I love that. I can tell that she is with you. I'm sure, like her spirit, that you mentioned, that you might, there was a few times you weren't sure if you lost it. I think you do have Fanny watching over you, or the ghost of Fanny, or I think, you were meant to do this for a reason. And, I really think you were doing her proud, and she is watching you. I think probably your Fanny.
I hope so. I hope she's like right over here on my shoulder, because I really do everything I do, I really do try to do her proud. So yeah. Well, I like to say there is something out. There's something happening that I don't have control over. That for sure.
Yeah, well, you're definitely making her proud. That's for sure. And, she's taught you all of those things, which are just incredible. Just wow. Sort of switching gears a little bit, you're not just Fanny Brice, you're also known as the Broadway expert, one of your many hats, a true multi-hyphenate, as we say. And, you want to learn more about her being multi-hyphenate, check out the first episode of Live with Rye. We talk all about that. As the Broadway expert, I'd love to know, what is one thing you can offer to performers as live performances start to resume and we get closer to a return of Broadway? What is one sort of thing you can offer to them, or be it advice, be it recommendation?
Well, I think my big thing, and just make it clear, as the Broadway expert, I'm very much someone who's a performer business coach, but I'm one who works with actors who work on stage and backstage and creatives and things like that. So I just want to be clear where I'm coming from as far as that. Right. And I have a couple of things I would say. The thing about, and I think before the pandemic, what people found hard with me is the fact that I do all these things. But I think, and I've always done all those things because they complement each other and they help level everything else up. They create income. They create some agency over me and my life, and be able to make some life decisions and work towards goals that I want. I'm not always not always the yes girl as far as like waiting for somebody to hire me. I'm creating my own work and things like that. So with the pandemic, people are realizing is that they need to do similar things to have agency over their career and their trajectory, because otherwise there is no certain outcome. Because most of the time as a performer, as a traditional performer, and again, there's nothing wrong with this, but you're always waiting for the next opportunity and you have no control over an outcome from an audition, or you don't even know if you're going to get the audition. I mean, so much of that, is real. It's so real. So as Broadway starts to come back, as theater starts to come back, as auditions start to come back, my thing would be just to give the people watching some agency to start to like create their own work, or to create their own path in other ways that can enhance and grow their performing career. So like whether you're going to create a solo show, or whether you're going to figure out new ways to meet the creative entities that are out there so that maybe they can think of you to hire you. That may just be in reaching out and letting people know who you are. That may just be agency, and like you are going to go out and take these classes and approach them in a certain way so that people hire you for the Broadway show or for whatever. But I want to just give people more agency to act on behalf of themselves in their career. And realize too, this is the other big thing, as we head sort of going back into auditions and Broadways and things coming back, is realize that there are no rules in this business. And I know Ryan knows this because I've said this to him before in a class. But like, I think people think there are these rules that we have to follow and we need to behave and not ask questions and not make phone calls. And maybe we can't choose a certain song because somebody said they didn't like it at one point. But these are like, people have preferences of what they like or don't like, or whether or not they want a phone call or whether or not they like that song or not. And you need to start thinking about yourself as a business and what serves you long term. And fine, if one person doesn't like the song, great. But that doesn't mean that everybody doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I used to sing Don't Rain on My Parade for like practically every audition because it got me called back for like 3 Broadway shows. I mean, there's reason that I was choosing to sing the song and I loved it, but there were still a few people that were like, I don't think you should sing that song. You sing it all the time. Do you know what I mean? But why wouldn't I sing it all the time? That's what's getting me the callbacks for the big jobs that I actually want. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Not to say I do that song now. I don't really do it as much anymore, but like you have to remember that you need to take some agency and remember there are no rules. You got to do what's best for you without sacrificing your morals and without hurting anybody else in the process, basically, in order to help you continue to move forward in your career, because that's the way that you can have some onus to it without waiting for other people.
I love that. It is so true. And yes, as you said about the rule book, that is one of the things I learned from you in the multi-hype course as a creative, that there is no rule book for whether you're a performer like yourself or a creative like me. There is no rule book to how to do things. There's no, you have to do it this way. We are creating it. And, and it's okay to also wear several hats. It's okay to, be a performer and a producer and a this and a that, and that's what's great. And so, I love that. That's something that's really stuck with me, is that there is no rules, and, there's things that people have done that have maybe stuck, but it's not, you can create your own rules. And I love that. I think that that's wonderful. Well, as we finish up here, what advice for others would you have for those who are maybe thinking about whether it's creating a one-person show, creating something of their own, and they don't know where to start, and they're, maybe they're overwhelmed, or they don't think that people will watch, or they don't think that, they're good enough? What advice would you give to them?
Okay, my first big thing, the easiest thing in going about creating something, taking from my own experience, is answer a need. So if you can answer a need, whether it's like fulfilling a show or a creative project or an entity, or even like a social media handle, maybe it's advice driven about a topic. Maybe it's history driven about a topic. Maybe it's all about your favorite star because you want to, put them on a platform and give them a platform. You're answering a need where there's already an audience. So I think that's always, a great place to begin, because I always say answer a need, not an ego. Because the thing is, I think it's easiest for somebody to go into planning a show or a project and be like, I just want to talk about my life moving to New York City. Like for me, I just want to talk about my life moving to New York City and becoming an actress. Great. However, that's not specific enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, and there are thousands of people doing that. So, you know what I mean? Like, the 10 of your friends will have already seen your other friends do a show like that. You know what I mean? Like, so answer a need. And we still want to figure out a way to answer the need, but also be able to show who you are in that. And that's usually the best place to start. And then don't be afraid to collaborate, because creativity and the performing arts is really at the heart of collaboration. So, I mean, I take no credit for doing my Fanny Brice solo show on my own. I have a team of if you go on my website, you'll see I have a team of 8 or 9 people. Plus, not even on that website is all the people at Stellar who help me stream. I have, you know what I mean? I have other people as well that are helping me with the show in some way, shape, or form. So don't be afraid to collaborate in order to create something. I think people sometimes are afraid of collaboration because they're afraid that person might do all the pushing or the pulling or the work or the not work, or as long as you can come into it with a collaborative and kind of put it all out on paper of what you each are going to do as far as responsibilities and things like that, and who owns it. And as long as you come out of that in the beginning, that shouldn't be an issue. Or, you bring in people for the things that you are not very good at. Like I wrote my show, but I also know that I needed a second eye. And then, I know that my director is a great writer too. And then he became part writer of the show. And then, you know what I mean? So like you have to really collaborate, and then you can do no wrong.
I love that. Such great advice. And I agree with all of it. I think that is wonderful and important. And I hope people will heed that. Before we go, where can we follow you, keep up with you, visit you, all the good stuff? Give it to us.
Okay, so Rye's already been sharing it. So you can watch my show or get tickets to stream the show, get more information about the show. FabulousFannyBriceShow.com. Thank you. Mm-hmm. You can find out more about me, the actress, at KimberlyFayGreenberg.com. Look at that. So good. And then you can also find out more at TheBroadwayExpert.com. So that's like if you would want to work with me one-on-one, or maybe take one of my business courses, things like that. You can find me on social at KF Greenberg, which is there next to my name here, or at the Broadway Expert, Fabulous Fanny Brice. If you Google me online, Kimberly Fay Greenberg, a whole plethora of pages and pages of stuff will come up. So you can look at that stuff. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter. You can listen to my music on your favorite streaming service, or on Pandora or Spotify. Please feel free to send me a message. Yes, so I'm there, and I'm currently teaching as well the next multi-hype multi-hyphenate workshop. Those are going to be coming up soon, so make sure to check out that website, multihypeworkshop.com.
Oh, crap, I didn't put that one, but yes.
Oh no, it's okay, don't worry, because if you look at my websites or on my social, you'll see it. So don't stress. And then yeah, so there you go. And I'm in the process. I've told one person this before you. I'm in the process of writing a book. So that's like my next project. So who knows? I don't know when that will come out, but obviously, because I'm just writing it. But like, it's all about the business and more on that kind of thing, like creative, business and things like that for the actors. So
yeah,
I'm excited about that.
That is very exciting. Very exciting. You are doing all of it. So much good stuff. Let me just say, for those out there, creatives out there, the multi-hype course, if you want to take it, visit Kimberly's website. It is so worth it. I am biased because I took it, but it changed my life for the better. You will learn so much about everything.
Multihypeworkshop.com.
multihypeworkshop.com. You will learn so much. And as I said, like kind of what you talked about here, there's no rule book, and, it's great. So a lot of creatives have already taken it, and you may see on Facebook, even some creatives that who have taken it, because we all post about it and share it. So please make sure, if you are interested, you take that and follow Kimberly and all that she is doing. Listen, Kimberly, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I loved learning all about you and all about Fanny. And before we go, for those watching, if you want to keep up with me, you can visit me on Twitter and Instagram at Rye_Myers. And you can like me on Facebook at official Rye Myers on Facebook. That's new. I'm still getting used to it. Every time I say it, I forget. And lastly, as I said before, if you are so inclined, you can head to ridethenewsguy.com/donate, or click on the QR code, scan the QR code here. If you'd like to make a donation and help me support my platform, the show, it would mean so much to me. But if you got value out of this, please make sure you follow me. I love hearing from you and love to connect. So with that, Kimberly, thank you so much. I really love talking to you.
You're the best. Thank you.